yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast, the People's Podcast, Players Podcast, Prognosticators Podcast, Pedialyte Podcast, the only Flyers podcast. I'm Russ Joy, at Joy on Broad. This guy next to me over here, Anthony SanFilippo, at Ant SanPhilly, the man all the way at the end, Bundy, Chris Therien, Therien6 on Twitter. We are live. We are excited about a very, very exciting episode. Episode 225 of Snow the Goalie. 225 episodes, 5.5 years into this thing. Still the only Flyers podcast. We have a lot to get to today. The team's out west. A West Coast swing. They're bonding. John Tortorella says he hopes they even show up playing a little guilty. We'll get to that in a bit. Plus, we have some thoughts on the standouts thus far this season and the biggest disappointments. But before we get into that, let's hear from the man in the middle. He's got some coiffed hair. I don't know if that's a toupee. I don't know if that he's just
I took my hat off
a few
today.
Strands, but look
I
at
took
that.
the hat off.
Wow. Anthony SanFilippo, go ahead. How you doing, fella? Look at you.
I'm doing good. There. You know, it's funny. Like we used to do the little pre-show for 5 minutes before we actually did the podcast for the YouTube only audience. That was something we were doing. Even that, I don't think is sometimes enough. I sometimes wish that people could see the 5 minutes before we actually click live. Mm-hmm. Because it's always some kind of technological shit show last minute.
I think it's fine. We figured it out. We did our thing as we usually do. I wonder if people would like to see the stuff that happens before the show. Perhaps we'll have some news on that at some point in the not too distant future. Perhaps some people will be able to join us for those few moments before we actually go live with the show. Huh. Well, if you're joining us on YouTube, by the way, which is the number one place to go, you can be on Facebook, and that's fine. You can drop your questions, comments, concerns. If you're on Twitter, you can tweet at us, although we can't pull them up on the screen. But YouTube's the place to be, youtube.com/@SnowTheGoalie, or go to YouTube and type in Snow the Goalie, and you'll find your way here. Make sure if you don't have an account or you're not signed in, please do sign in. It's free, whatever. Drop the comments and hit that like button. Bundy, how are you doing today?
Doing great, guys. Doing really good. I woke up this morning realizing that the Edmonton Oilers are worse than the Philadelphia Flyers, and they have the two best players on the planet on their team. But you know what? Yeah, they lose to San Jose last night. I mean, you could even see the coach, Jay Woodcroft, at the end of the game looking at Charlie Manson, known more as Dave Manson by his original name, but he was Charlie on the ice. And yes, he was Charlie on the ice. He said to him, well, I think that's it. And Dave Manson goes, yep. As they're walking off in San Jose. So, you know what? There's a lot of teams that are down right now, none more so than the Edmonton Oilers. So if you're a Flyers fan, you could actually wake up this morning saying things are better in Flyerland, albeit that bad loss to San Jose, than they are in Edmonton. They are a mess there, and that's all I had right now. There'll be a lot more today as we're doing our regular show. We got a couple morning afters coming at you tomorrow and Sunday, but it's good to be here today, and an opportunity for the Flyers to get revenge on two teams that stole 4 points from them in the Wells Fargo Center, Anaheim and LA. It used to, remember, Anthony, like 7-8 years ago, it used to be like a three-headed monster going through California when they were loaded. Like San Jose was loaded. Anaheim was very good still when they had Perry and Getzlaf, and of course LA coming off the cup. So it's not like that anymore. When you go out to LA, there's no reason if you're a good team you can't, swipe 4 points out of there because, out of the 6 possible. But this is an opportunity now for the Flyers, with fresh revenge on their minds to get out there and try to listen. One thing I can tell you, which is fun, the closer the Flyers are to that line, that cutoff line, the better it is for everybody. So, and they're there. Like, they've won enough games. They're starting to move. They move along a little bit where they were around 500. So my attitude is keep her rolling, find a way to get some points this weekend, and stay in the pack. It makes things a lot more interesting in Philadelphia, or for any team for that matter that's in a playoff hunt.
So I'll say this. I'll reply to that, Bundy. I think that, you look at those 3 teams, and you're right. They're not as good as they once were.
Right.
The Sharks are obviously dreadful. and the Flyers already lost to them. Anaheim has been a little bit of a surprise, I think, so far. They're 7-5 to start the season, right?
Yeah.
So a little bit of a surprise, but they've got some really good offensive players. That doesn't mean that the Flyers should not take advantage of the poor defensive game that the Ducks have, and they really don't have great goaltending. The Kings, on the other hand, I think are a much more complete team. That said, I thought that the Flyers could have played them better and maybe even could play them well enough to win a game against them. But I think that the Kings, you have a little less margin for error against the Kings than you do against the Ducks. So, I think that the Anaheim game to me is the more important game. You want to go out there and show that game in Philly was just a sloppy game by the Flyers at times, because I thought at times they were the better team and they should be the better team. The Kings, you just want to see a good effort against that team, and if you steal the win, great.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's the Kings are the best team now in California. And, they're a big team too, right? Like, they haven't really changed a lot of their philosophy. So, if they play a heavy game, LA can, have a lot of success, where I think Anaheim's the most likely, likely spot the Flyers get the win. But, you never know. They can get 2 wins on the weekend, or they could come in and just, wheels come off and it's not a good weekend. But that's why I said last week, guys, we were talking, like, I would have liked to have seen them get that win against San Jose, because it gets the road trip off on the right track. And losing to someone like that, it doesn't help at all in terms of your confidence moving to the next road game. You win that first game, man, you can do some pretty good things. I've been on those type of trips, 3-4 games, 5-game road trips, and it's so critical to get the first one, especially against a bad team, and that didn't happen.
I just want to point something out from around the league here, Bundy, and just go with me for a second. You mentioned that the Kings play a heavy game, right? So they're 8-2-3. They play a heavy game. Does Vegas play a heavy game?
They did last year in the playoffs. I haven't seen a lot of them, but traditionally they do.
They're 11-2-1. Does Dallas play a heavy game?
Yeah, they do for sure. Yeah,
they're 8-3-1. Does Boston play a heavy game?
Yes, they do.
They're 11-1-1. Are we starting to see a trend as to what works in the NHL in 2023-24?
But that's always worked. Like, look at the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah.
But, I always said, like, bigger, hungrier, heavier teams win. The skill is cute. It's great. And if you look back at a handful of teams in the playoffs that have had those skill really on display, it's guys where they had the skill, but they had a lot of surrounding players. Tampa's a great example of that, right?
Yep.
Like, they have Kucherov, Stamkos, but they have so many good supporting pieces too that could finish checks. They get in on it. They have great defense. Same with Colorado. Vegas is a team, like, they're really built well. And you know what? You can look around the league and see teams that have individual top-heavy talent. New Jersey's coming along with Jack Hughes, but Edmonton is a dumpster fire beyond words. And that's what happens when you have to shovel $20 million in on 2 players. They're wonderful to watch. They're incredible talents, but it's not a winning formula. Right. You can't have one skill guy running your whole team. And I think the Flyers did for some time here with Giroux. He was the height of the skill, but that skill wasn't Crosby level. So you got to be careful what you're looking at with the skill. Look at Tarasenko as a goal scorer with St. Louis. He produced that year, but he predominantly been a regular season type of guy. Again, will he ever produce in a playoff again? I don't know the answer to that, unless he gets back in. But, Sexy's great to watch, but producing big, heavy teams, getting on a forecheck, cycling the puck, wearing them down, having a one and done in your own D zone is just paramount to a team winning, because it eliminates a lot of fatigue and the heavy work you have to put into a hockey game through the course of a year. Bigger is better. It is, and heavier is better when you get to those points. And I'm not saying anyway. Look at the Washington Capitals. Remember, they won it in 2018?
Yeah.
They were a monster team. They would just forecheck the hell out of you. So the examples of the team that have won, and the best example I can give you is with the skill is Tampa. But, man, those guys come after you, too, on a forecheck, and they do play a very, very heavy game as well as they do with their skill with guys like Kucherov, Point, Stamkos, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, the only other team that's playing really, really well right now that maybe is a little bit more of a hybrid and isn't quite the heavy team, but is off to a good start. And I think you look at goaltending being a big part of it, but also being a veteran team is the Rangers.
Yeah,
at 10-2-1. I mean, they got a little bit of size, a little bit of heaviness, but they got some skill as well.
They do. That's a great example, Anthony, of having more skill. I think the Devils are in that. Like, until the Devils prove to me, or one of those, like Florida last year, they were a heavy team.
Yeah.
With Hitchcock, like, they get into the forecheck. Not all of them are built like that. The Montreal Canadiens are not like that. Toronto is not like that.
No.
Edmonton is not. The Ottawa Senators are not.
Right.
And you have to look at your roster and say, wow, all that skill's really nice, but is it going to get you a win? Is it going to win you a playoff series and help you advance?
Right.
No, it's not.
Hi, Russ.
Before we transition back in here, I want to wish EKT8750 over on YouTube a very happy birthday. Snow the Goalie on my birthday. Love it. How about that?
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday out there. Happy birthday. I'm at a point now, guys, where you bring up the playing heavy thing, and I don't want to start a war, but it's almost as if the people who, it's still early, we're only an eighth of the way into the season, and things could obviously change. It's almost as if teams that play hockey the way that you expect a hockey team to play, and when they play a style that is probably going to benefit them in the postseason, when they do that and they do it well, it tends to perform better than whatever the new age analytical hockey would tell you. Now, I'm sure that it just sent off 50 people. Well, probably not our audience, but it would probably send off a bunch of anti-analytic antenna in this area berserk, because we happen to note the fact that underlying numbers are not the be all end all. Top skill on blah, blah, blah. The being at the forefront of the trends of blah, blah, blah. Sometimes it's just nice to see hockey teams playing hockey the right way or the traditional way. It doesn't mean that the league can't evolve, but it certainly means that that old adage of hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work, it kind of continues to prove to be true. And in this league, if you are not only hardworking but also talented, that will win out. Edmonton's soft. Toronto is soft. You can put as many skilled players as you want on some of these teams, but if they don't have the guts and they don't have the heart, they can't win. They can't win in this league.
I only named 3 Canadian teams. I just want to clarify that. But let's actually make it 4 and throw Calgary in there too.
Yeah.
Not Winnipeg. We like Winnipeg.
Winnipeg
right?
and Vancouver tend to play a heavier game. Yes, they do. They do. I love this one too, though. This is another one too. When you look at Edmonton, and I love going around Edmonton is a poorly run organization from the guy who ran one of the best organizations in the last 25 years with Kenny Holland, right? In Detroit, The guy was a magician, ran a dynasty. He goes out here, and you think that, you got a McDavid, Draisaitl. You got no fucking goalie. You ain't winning shit. You go pull a guy out of a fucking men's league tomorrow, it'll be the same thing as putting the 2 guys in they had before. It's frustrating watching a team like that flounder because you want to see talent like that in the playoffs.
There it is, the Bundy bomb. I just didn't want to interrupt his point there.
I got all off my course there. I got literally ticked off watching that.
By the way, I think this is a shirt. Expected goals. Expected by whom?
That's the worst. That's the worst stat I've ever seen in my life. Somebody asked me that the other day, and I'm like, "What is that?" Oh, if I shoot and hit the net, is that an expected goal? Because if you took the goalie out of the net, it would go in, so it's expected to be a goal. The dumbest stat I've ever seen is that one. There's nothing that'll ever tell me that somebody's job hunting more than when we actually throw a stat like that and see some GM's face. And the GM's like this. That makes sense. Let me take that stat on and imply it and implore it into our organizational, how we view our team. It's the craziest stat ever, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, what it is it's just the repurposing of what for years and years and years teams monitored as their chances, right? What what they viewed as their high opportunity chances, right? And so you sit there and it's just a mathematical way of calculating those into they should have scored this many goals because they had this many chances from those higher opportunity areas, higher percentage areas. That's all it is. I mean, it's nothing different. It's just another way of expressing it. But it tries to make them sound smart. But I remember we asked Hitch about this a couple of years ago, and he was basically saying this stuff has existed forever. Like, we've always had this kind of information. It's just that now it's out there publicly, and now you think that people think that they can analyze it publicly and be smarter at the game than those of us who are coaching it are. Like, they already had this information. Yes, is there other things that are more in detail now, that are easily more trackable now than they once were, whereas before you were doing it with your eyes on video, and now it can be done with technology? Sure. And it makes it easier? Yes, 100%. Like, no one is trying to say don't pay attention to analytics, because there are things that there is value to it. But you cannot watch a game in any sport, but especially hockey. You cannot watch a game.
Let me introduce a new segment. I want to introduce a new segment to the Skull. We're gonna to the show. It's going to be called Over Under Expected Goals. All right, I'm going to give you guys a name. You're going to tell me if this guy has scored over or under their expected goals through 12 or 13 games this season. Are you ready?
Go ahead. I like this. Go ahead.
That's it. We're trying to be trendy here, guys. We're being trendy. Austin Matthews. Has he gone over or under his expected goals for the season?
Where's he at right now? How many goals does he have?
Well, if I tell you that, it's going to give it away, though.
You gotta give me an idea of where the guy is. I mean, I don't have everybody memorized.
Fine. He actually has potted 13 goals.
I would say he's over.
Bundy?
Expected goals.
13 goals, so they probably would have thought he was going to score 50. He's over.
He is over. His expected goals for the season are 9. He's outperformed by 4. Good job, Austin Matthews. Yeah. Sidney Crosby, 7 goals on the year. Over or under expected goals?
7. That's close. It's probably over, because he's more considered a playmaking type. Yeah.
Under. He has 7 goals. His expected goals are 7.7.
Get the freaking stupid.
Give me a second. I want to make sure that I pull this up so that we don't lose this. Jay, we'll get to this question here in a second. Jay sent over a super chat, which, by the way, you can do here on Snow the Goalie if you so choose. You just go down to the bottom, you leave a comment, pull it up on the screen. Jay will get to this as soon as we're done playing the over-under game, but I don't want you to feel like we forgot about you. All right. Jake Gensel. 5 goals. Over or under?
Under.
He is under. He has 5 goals. Or wait, no. Yeah, under. He has 5 goals. Expected goals, 7.5.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, I would get that.
Brock Besser. He has 11 goals.
Over.
Expected goals, 7.2. Tyler Toffoli has 8 goals.
Under.
I'm going to go over.
He's over what they're expecting. Oh, yeah.
I'll go over on Toffoli.
That is correct. Yeah. He has 8 goals, expected 7.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the first Flyer on the list.
Okay.
Do you want to guess who the team leader in expected goals is? It's Konechny.
Konechny.
He has 9 goals. Is that over or under his expected goals total for the year?
Over.
I'm going to say over, but I think it's only slightly over.
Oh, no, it's significantly over.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. He has 9 goals. His expected goals on the year, 5.9. 5.9. I'm going to see if I wanted to see.
So here's where I have.
Wait. We can play this a little bit more specific. Go ahead. But I have it now for all the Flyers now.
That's fine. But here's where I have a problem with the stat. Mm-hmm. Okay, like if you're looking at the Flyers from a team perspective, okay, because listen, even on a bad team, okay, somebody's got to score. That's why we talk about this in the NBA all the time, right? Russ, when you have a player on a bad team, he averages 21 points a game. Well, of course he averages because he's on a
break and average 20-something points because he's usually 1 or 2 option on a bad team.
Right, exactly. So somebody's got to score, right? So you assume when you look at the Flyers and you say, well, somebody's got to be their leading goal scorer. And who's the most likely guy? It's Konechny. I mean, Atkinson, okay, probably is close to that, but it's got to be Konechny. So if he's leading the team with 9 through 13 games, yeah, that's probably slightly ahead of pace, but it's what you would expect, I would think, on a bad team. So that's where I have a problem with the actual stat trying to identify, well, that's what his expected goal should be. He's their top goal scorer. He's expected to be the top goal scorer, and he is. Okay, maybe he's a goal ahead. I don't know. I mean, that's, to me, why I have a problem with it.
All right, here, I'm going to run down this list now instead of having us. Although people are interacting here, so maybe we keep this going for a couple. Cam Atkinson, 6 goals on the year. Is that over or under his expected goals for the season?
I'm going to go slightly under. I'm going to say he's probably like 6.5, 6.7 or something like that.
I'm going to go a little bit over because I don't know if they factor injuries. I'm going to go over.
It is over, 4.8. How about Joel Farabee, 6 goals on the year? Over, under?
Well, that's probably right on it, but you're saying over. I'm going to say under, but I bet it's really close.
Over, 2.8 expected.
Yeah, I think he's
now,
over.
I want to flip the script a little bit here because there's a guy. Now, if you're looking for, if you pray at the altar of expected goals, if that's your thing, if that's something that's exciting to you, if looking for a silver lining and underlying numbers is your thing, it's your brand, here you go. I like this, by the way, and we're going to get to this in a second. Rob Greeley, Tippett is so under he has an Australian accent.
I like a good laugh. That's funny.
It's a good one. So we know that Konechny leads the team, 5.9. Atkinson was second, 4.8. Owen Tippett, 4 expected goals on the season. He's potted 2. Who's fourth on the team? I'll give you a hint. It's a young guy.
Is this expected goals?
Expected goals. I will tell you a hint. It is a young guy.
Morgan
Fourth on the team
Forster.
in expected goals.
Forster.
Morgan
Bundy,
Frost.
what did you say?
Morgan
You said Frost? The answer is Forster, 3.2. He has not scored. And I did see a lot of people asking about Morgan Frost. So just so we're clear, Morgan Frost, no goals on the season, 1.4 expected. There you go. Everybody can.
Can we get back?
The only reason
I want to get back to like actual hockey talk.
I actually have some stuff from coaches about analytics, like in real time, and I can tell you directly what they said. I wrote an article on it. Go back and pull it up because I do. And I'll tell you exactly what coaches think of it. There was an article. No, there was something back here just talking about. There was something about analytics. Here it is. Here, I think you had it up.
Okay. The Markster 68. Analytics are going to kill sports. All these expected goals for and against don't win games. Actual goals win games. If you chance a team, but the other scores more, guess who wins?
Yeah, and for some reason I don't get it, but the analytics people don't like those heavier type of teams. They don't like that. Doesn't make work for them because I don't know if it's because it's a bully pulpit. I'm not sure why, but why the big heavier teams are not liked by analytics, and none of it kind of tosses a lot of their stats out the window a lot of the time. So I'll give you a good example. I went to Craig Berube and I did an article about 2020. I wrote it before the season about analytics, thoughts and analytics from 3 different coaches. Brendan Moore was the other one, Berube, and Rick Tocchet. And I think the current coach at the time that was here in 20, was it maybe Vigneault? Or it might have been, Mike Yeo. Mike Yeo?
It might have been Yeo.
Yeah, so anyway, long story short.
No, it would have been Vigneault in 2020.
Long story short, they all said that, like Hitch said, that these are numbers that we already knew. And somebody came along and like created a job for themselves and said, oh, here, look at these crazy numbers. But what happens is when those sheets come down, the coaches will just glare at them and chuck them because they already know what they already know. Like, I don't need someone to tell me that, Connor McDavid is dangerous in between the hash marks. That's stupid. Mm-hmm. That's just about playing hockey. And I don't need some fucking number on a paper or some, map laying out where a guy like that is with little red dots all over it. That's bullshit. And so coaches know that they're getting that stuff brought down to them between periods. And for the most part, it's just a translation of something else that we already know.
Yeah.
But someone created it, found a little job for themselves, and that's fine. But I'm just telling you what coaches think. The other 2 guys, not as animated maybe as Chief, but certainly 2 guys that essentially said the same thing. All they do is confirm what we already know. That's the best way of putting it. So they already have an idea of what everybody on the opposition has, and what these numbers do in a mathematical sense proves to them what the coaches and the people involved in the hockey ops pretty much already know about the other team, but it's more in a numbers game. if that makes any sense. I don't like numbers. I'm an eye test guy. I can't stand it. But if there's something that's really bad where some guy's in his zone way too long, he's not handling the puck well, I guess I better have a look at that. I would like to see what the body of work is. And that's what's frustrating about analytics for me and for other people who've been around the game a long time. It's unnecessary because we already know what we already know.
And you should just point out real quick that those three guys here in 2023, and I know it's early in the season, all three of them have winning records.
Yeah.
Currently.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure, Anthony. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, again, I'm not saying that you need to be completely one way, but you cannot be completely the other. You just can't. You cannot expect to manage hockey, coach hockey, play hockey based on your analytics alone. You can't.
I think the big problem is you get people who go. I think at this point, people, and this isn't just in hockey, you get people who skew too far one way, where it's only the eye test and they don't want to look at numbers, and then you get these other people who skew entirely to the numbers and don't put as much on what they should be able to see with their eyes. And sometimes I question, like, are the people who are 95% stat driven, are they capable of analyzing what they're seeing, or is it an over-reliance on those numbers? Now, there are certain stats that I think like give you a decent enough idea, like that you can look and say, all right, like this is fine. Like if you want to say like we can quantify what a high danger chance is and you want to compare those numbers, I think that's fine. If you want to look at Corsi and Fenwick because they give you a more holistic idea of shots that are attempted even if they don't get through or aren't on net, I think that's also fine. I think that those stats are fine. It's when I think you start seeing people trying to grasp at straws where they're like, oh, well, you know, there's the percentage for, there's this for, and you start going like, all right, like that's fine. And like, I'm sure that you could use that to like maybe prop up a narrative or some kind of trend that you think you're seeing, but I don't think you can build an entire team on it. And I don't think that even if you're able to like flip those numbers fully in your favor, that it's going to necessarily mean that you're a top 2 team in the league contending for a cup.
Anthony, one for you, baseball guy. Mm-hmm. Last 2 World Series, who are the managers that won? And do you think that they employed an analytical, complex analytical strategy?
No, and not, as a matter of fact, it can go further than the last 2. I mean, yes, Houston, maybe building their team, they used a lot of the baseball analytics to kind of get those kinds of players, but those games in the playoffs were not managed like a team who was being driven by analytical data. It just weren't.
Absolutely.
And if you go back even before them, I mean, you go back to the year that the Nationals won in 2019, they did not. The year the Red Sox won in 2018, they did not. So I mean, like there are a lot of teams that when push comes to shove, they don't necessarily go by that book.
Look at the coconut guy that they had here, the coconut oil manager they had in Philly.
Gabe Kapler.
That guy, I forget his name right now.
Gabe Kapler. Did he get fired yet?
Gabe Kapler, right. He went out there.
Yes.
Now that guy lives on analytics.
Yep.
Right? And when the analytics say to you, oh, it's looking good because we're winning, it's spun the other way with almost the same team he had. So he's married to it, and I'm sorry, I would never, ever, ever hire a guy like that if I were an owner or a president of a hockey ops club or baseball, whatever it is. Never. Ever.
I agree.
I want to go to something, by the way, that Bundy said before, because I see it in the comments here, and it's about some of the names that he brought up. He said he talked to Berube and he talked to Brindamore. Those are 2 guys who all right, I want to play a game here for a second. We had this last episode, this last morning after that we did, where we talked about the coach and we talked about the timeline and all that. Both Brindamore and Berube, I would argue, are going to have longer careers from this point forward as a head coach than a John Tortorella, and both have ties to this organization. Do you think that there's ever a scenario where the Flyers, like down the line, that you could see a Craig Berube who like already coached here, or a Rod Brindamore who could you see a scenario where one of those guys is like intrigued by the idea of coming back to Philadelphia and being a coach of this team, like if and when they're ready to flip that switch to be a playoff contender.
Berube for sure, because he's got a home here.
Yeah.
He went on and won, and he's a Flyer legend. He's also Jones's best friend. Ultimately, I don't people know that or not, but yeah, they're very, very close. Now, I'm not saying that anything's going to change tomorrow, but he has a contract with another team. But do I see that happening? Yeah. Well, I mean, is Torts going to be here for 8 years? I doubt it, unless he's winning one cup after another. But the time frame doesn't add up really, and by the time they build a little, and also, I know Danny Briere, he loves Berube, loves him.
Yeah. A lot of people do. I mean, let's keep in mind that Armstrong, Doug Armstrong, GM of the Blues, loves Craig Berube. I mean, even now, 4 years after they've won the Stanley Cup, I mean, big fan, or 5 years, I guess, after they won the Stanley Cup, he's still a big fan of Berube. So,
fun little thought experiment.
But it is. It certainly is. We should probably answer that question from the super chat.
I wanted to get to this now.
Yeah.
So Jay Grebby sent over a super chat. Thanks, Jay. Says Friedman said on 32 Thoughts today, Edmonton was very close Wednesday on a massive goalie trade. Any chance the Flyers were involved?
I can't imagine that they were, unless Edmonton is so incredibly desperate to get a goalie that they are willing to gamble without the result of the Team Canada thing coming out yet. I think that there will be teams lining up around the block for Carter Hart if that report comes out and he's not part of it. But I do think that they have to wait and see, and I think that's so. No, I can't imagine that it was the Flyers.
Again, I'm actually preaching the other side of this ridiculous thing, because they won't put anything out. It's been the most ridiculous thing I've seen the NHL do. They were previewing that they might put stuff out months ago. Now they won't even put anything out. So I'll tell you what. People should shut their mouths about it from wherever they are until there's legal stuff that's done. And after that, you have at it. But I'll tell you what, I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anybody get suspended. And until there's legal action, I think the players should stick to their guns on this. Now, I'm not defending anybody, but there's a whole layer of weird shit that's gone on with this. And I'm so sick of teasing it every week that it's news. If they did something wrong, they should be held accountable for it. And if they didn't, then they shouldn't be threatened by the league to sit out games.
I'm popping this one up from Evan. This Team Canada thing can't be relevant at this point.
Right.
It absolutely is relevant. But it absolutely is from a management perspective, okay? I get it, and Bundy, I agree with you, because I think the league has really, really butchered this and screwed it up.
The league has messed it up, yes.
Beyond belief.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that there are 32 GMs out there who are knowing what the league has not put out publicly, and they're going to sit there and say, well, just because the league is screwing this up, I'm going to say, screw it, and I'm going to give up 4 top prospects or draft pick and 2 players, whatever, and go get a guy who potentially could be in trouble within the next year, right? And I don't think teams are doing it, so I think that there are players who are just unmovable because that still hangs over their head as a possibility. And so that's why it is relevant. That's why it remains relevant. Whoever's involved, not involved, that's for down the road, right? That's for, you can't really talk about it until something happens. And that's why we're where we are. But that doesn't mean behind the scenes when these guys are talking to each other about potential trades or whatever, that it absolutely has to be brought up in conversation. Everybody knows. It's not like it's not like there's only some people know and then the other GMs don't know. They all know. It's such a small circle. Everybody knows who's involved, who may be involved and may not be involved, and so therefore you're going to make a decision on whether or not to trade for that player. You got to be willing to accept the ramifications if that thing comes out and that player's involved. So that's why it's there.
Is there collaboration between the league and the police? I don't understand really what's going on, because to me it's so bizarre. So what I'm saying is, and we talked about this 3 months ago, if you're not going to make a case on a guy, then he shouldn't be threatened with his career. Now, if he did something wrong, he needs to be held accountable for that. But what I'm saying is we've seen nothing come from law enforcement that suggests there's going to be something coming out about it. It looks like they've actually done more of a job trying to conceal it and hide it than they have been trying to be transparent about the whole thing.
Yeah, and just to pop this up real quick, I'm just here we go.
Sorry, go ahead.
There you go. Andy Strickland said he knew the names that are involved, so what wouldn't the GMs already know? Yes. And here's the thing. Like, we've all heard names.
Right.
We've all heard multiple names. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's accurate. And so we can't report it because we don't have look, down here in Philadelphia, I don't have access to the London, Ontario police. I don't have sources in the London, Ontario Police Department who can tell me with 100% certainty that players X, Y, and Z are involved and players A, B, and C are not. So therefore, we could hear names and hear rumors, but this is too slippery a slope to even venture down, here's what I'm hearing kind of stuff in a public forum. You can't run the risk of that. Just cannot happen. And one other one I wanted to pull up from David Castleman, Victor Mete was on that team, who was on the Flyers. I should point out the one thing about Victor Mete, and the reason why you never hear his name tied to this, is he was not even in London at the time of the alleged incident. He was on a family vacation in Jamaica. So wasn't even there, and that's been corroborated and proven. So that's why his name never comes up.
I still think that this is just a big case of #lawyers. Like Anthony DeGrazio says, the NHLPA has to be putting pressure on the league. I think that's it. I think that's the biggest part here. And
that's correct.
I feel like so much of this is maybe there was a chance that in the summer the league was like, yes, we would like to just put this out. Like, we would like to put out our discipline based on what has been presented to us. And they might legitimately now be in a spot where the NHLPA is saying, no, you're not going to announce anything until the London, Ontario police do. They are now tied. There's no... And that's entirely possible. Because, all right, let's play... I want to be done with this topic in 45 seconds. Let's play this out where...
Oh, I thought you were laughing at Eddie Revox.
I'm laughing at Eddie Revox.
Let's play this one out for a second. That
I love some of these comments there.
The NHL takes what information has been provided to them by the police, and they say, we're suspending or we're banning, because not everybody's an NHL player. We're going to ban these 3 guys, and we're going to suspend this NHL player and this XYZ. And you're going to have to go through the whole process. That what was the kid's name that Boston drafted? That was an awful human being as a kid,
I
high
forget
school
what that
player,
kid's name. Whatever
his name was.
Where did he play?
Wasn't it
no,
Mitch
the kid that
something?
Boston tried to sign?
Was it Mitchell Miller?
Oh,
No.
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
But say that they're there's a reinstatement process, blah, 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 and they put it out, it becomes big news, and it's the whole thing, right? And then it comes out that the London, Ontario police, they, 3 months from now, put out their report, and 2 of the guys that the league suspended, or said they were going to suspend, are ultimately cleared. That new evidence came to the forefront in the past 3 months, and actually 2 of those guys are fine. That's a huge lawsuit. That's an NHLPA lawsuit. That's a lawsuit by those players. It becomes a huge mess. I feel like it's all just tied together now, and it sucks because anybody who's involved in it should be banned, and probably if they are eventually allowed to apply for reinstatement, they can cross that bridge. But nobody should be playing. And if it turns out, and this is where it gets especially ugly, if it turns out that any player this season plays at the NHL level, and the league has known from their discussions with the London, Ontario police that this 1 player or 2 players or 10 or however many make it to the NHL this year and play a game, if the league has known that and the NHLPA has known those names and those guys take the ice this season, knowing that at any point this report could drop, that's a disgrace. That's horrific. And it's going to be a black mark on the league. It's going to be ultimately it'll get glossed over because the NFL is going on. The NBA gets more attention, but it will be a black eye on the sport.
As if the NHL doesn't have enough black eyes already.
Yeah, but this one's pretty bad. This one's pretty bad.
No, it is.
So,
I mean, the Chicago Blackhawks situation.
Let's talk about that really quick while we're on shitty news here. So another former hockey player
from that same
from
group.
the Blackhawks organization has now alleged in a lawsuit that the team's former video coach sexually assaulted him during the 2009-2010 season. And the Blackhawks didn't respond to it adequately because they were in the midst of a Stanley Cup run. Now, we pointed out the hypocrisy on the Press Row show the other day that the Ottawa Senators were penalized a first-round pick because they didn't provide a name of what was it? It was the team list as part of a deal a couple years ago. That cost a first-round pick. The Blackhawks, for the last allegation, paid $2 million, no hockey penalty. And now another player has made serious allegations. What are they going to do this time? Is it going to be another $1 million? They certainly wouldn't now that Chicago has Bedard, they wouldn't penalize him a draft pick now, would they? Like, where's this going to go, Ant? Like, if this ends up becoming the thing that it probably should become, then what?
It's a joke. The league is poorly run. I mean, there's no other way around it. They've had a bad commissioner for a very, very long time who only worries about his own public relations thing and does anything he can to help small market owners who keep him in the position that he's in, because there's enough of them that keep him getting compensated for that job that he should not have at this point. He's a terrible commissioner.
You know
and
what?
The league suffers because of it.
You know what else, too? I'm going to tell you something. I came in this league in 1994. What other league has lost 2+ years because of work stoppages for labor disputes? That is incompetence at the highest level, and he actually locked this league out for a year. I actually commend the fans that came back. That was a miracle. It really was, and it's the most misrun league from a standpoint. It doesn't even agree with the eye test. Like, people look at it and go, oh, my God, how bad is that that's the way they do their business? Really bad. Really, really bad.
Yep.
But, hey, you know what, guys? Let's put a couple more expansion teams in this baby.
That's
back
right.
to Atlanta for a third time.
Let's give more opportunities to AHL players.
46 more American League jobs. Let's go!
All right, let's try to get back to the Flyers here for a second. So they're out west. I know that we want to get to how we think things are going to play out. They play. We're recording this on Friday, so obviously they're in action tonight. They're in action again on Saturday. Before we get to those games, I want to take a look back at these 13 games that they've played so far, and I want to try to see if we can come to some form of consensus about the 3 standout players. It doesn't have to be breakout. I wanted to be careful about that. 3 standout guys, 3 guys that have looked the best of the bunch, and 3 guys who, through 13 games, are disappointing relative to where we expected them to be at the beginning of the season. And I obviously want to get from the people who are watching on YouTube and on Facebook and on Twitter as well. Feel free to drop yours in the comment section below. Let's start. Do we want to start negative or positive? Do we want to start with the disappointments or do we want to start with the positive? Which way do you want to go?
Start with the disappointments, only because we're in the negative. We've been talking about negative stuff, so we can slowly bring our way back up from where we were.
We're going to drain the swamp. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right. Let's think negative for a second. Which players have stood out as being a disappointment? Can I start?
Yes.
Cam York has been a disappointment.
Yes, he has.
That's one.
Oh, you're not gonna say anything about it. You're just gonna.
Do you want analysis?
Just say his name. Yes.
Yeah. So Cam York has been a disappointment. Although I think that a big part of it is because he has been forced into a role that he was not meant to fill this year. The Rasmus Ristolainen injury has had a significant impact. Despite how much fans seem to hate the guy through a short run as a Flyer, the Mark Stahl injury has also hurt their ability to be flexible and to put him with another veteran player who could maybe steady his game and help rebuild his confidence. And as we've talked about on Press Row Show and the morning after, like, there's not a better place necessarily for York to go to stabilize his game, but it doesn't change the fact that, like, control your controllables. He's trying to let the game come to him instead of grabbing the game by the throat. And it could be the Cali style. It could be the Cali boy thing.
It's figuring
at some point
out,
you have to control what you can control.
It's trying to. He doesn't know yet when to go and when not to go, so he's just playing it safe and waiting for everything to come to him. Mm-hmm. But you have to know when there's an opportunity to take more of the bulls by the horn, and he's yet to figure that out. That's a coaching thing. The coaches need to help him out more.
And give us one of your disappointments.
You want me to go mine, or did you want to go Bundy second?
Are we going? So I'm sorry. Are we going each? Your disappointment is York.
Yeah. So
for right now, like I'll
go
have
ahead,
3. I want to see if we get consensus or not.
So he wants to. We want to
Bundy,
get three.
So Bunny, give me one of your disappointments, and we'll see if we come up with a similar list among the
I'm
three
going to throw one right out there because everybody else has been making. I'm going to say Noah Cates.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I agree. That was the reason why I wanted you to go first, Bundy, because I didn't think you were going to go Noah Cates. But I think that
a lot of rope. No one talks about him.
Yeah, and I think it's more of what the disappointment there. I think is that the expectations were greater based off the season he had last year. He was playing in a top line center role and gave a pretty valiant effort in that role for a bad team. So much so that he received votes for Selke. And not just like one or two. Like he got a bunch. Like he got, not enough to really make everybody take notice, but he got some votes for the Selke. That's
an analytics. Analytics.
Yeah, right. Okay. And so like to me, like I said, all right, are we probably overvaluing what Noah Cates is a little bit? Sure. But I anticipated that even though I thought there would be a step back toward reality this season, I kind of think like he's just not even noticeable right now.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's been poor per se, but he's not really been noticeable as far as playing the game the way you need him to play. And so therefore I think that that's what's disappointing because it feels like a sophomore slump for him.
He may be the twin flame of York on forward. That's the way I see it. He's the exact same. He's the forward version of the defenseman York right now. And the reason I said him was because he skated by. If you're going to be the coach's pet and get a lot of the opportunities, then you better deliver too, right? Because there's other guys that have been tossed under the bus. Morgan Frost is the guy we're talking about. I can't say Morgan Frost. He hasn't played. Like he's hardly played. So I'm looking at guys. The second, go ahead, Anthony. You're third up. You go.
No, so the third one I'm going to go with. And this is maybe a little bit harsh, but I'm going to go with Tyson Forster, and I'm going to go Forster because his primary responsibility on the ice is to be a guy who scores goals. I mean, that's his job. He's looked at as a power forward who's supposed to go out there and get you goals. I'm not saying that the guy needed to be leading the team in goals right now, but he need to have scored at least one, right? And he doesn't have any. And so, like to me, that's a disappointment. He burst onto the scene last year with those 7 games, and you looked at this kid and you were like, oh, okay. This could be a future, top line or second line at worst scoring winger, and he's out there and you see him trying. And I'm not trying to make it seem like he's lazy or anything like that. It's not what I'm saying at all. But if you have a knack for scoring, you have a knack for scoring. And yeah, you're going to hit your droughts. I get it. But 13 games without a goal and he's getting shots, like that tells me that there's something not right with the shot, not right with the the ability to put it past NHL caliber goalies. He's had that goal scoring touch at the minor league level and the junior level, obviously, right? We know all this, but at the NHL level, it's just not there yet. I'd like to see it. And I'm not saying that it can't come. I'm not saying that he's a bust or anything like that. He's just been a little bit disappointing to me to this point.
That's fair.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, hasn't been able to score. He's shown a complete inability to be able to provide offense at this level, to be honest with you. That's just honest. It's not mean, unfair, and he's not alone. I mean, looking at numbers, I mean, there's a lot of other guys. We didn't mention them. Second place would be Owen Tippett.
Owen Tippett's on my list as well. I mean, you said 3, but I could go 5 or 6 deep with this. Sure. Owen Tippett for sure. I think he's been very inconsistent. Right, I think he's had a few really good games, and I think he's had a few games where he's had some nice plays, and then 10 seconds later is making a mistake, and it's like, well, what the heck, man? Like that you can't do that. You got to be better than that. So yeah, I think Owen Tippett's a guy. I'll be honest. I think Scotty Lawton, as much as I like him as a guy, and I think he's had. Yeah, he's been a little bit disappointing, and I got
He's got the second most points on the team, which I think is the hard part here.
Yeah.
If you're looking counting at counting stats as being the be all end all, then he doesn't belong here. But he's not been impactful. He has been put in positions where he has to kind of jostle around the lineup a bit to try to with the ebb and flows of which young guys are coming in and out. But okay.
There's some real value to Scott Laughton on this roster. Obviously, as a leader in the locker room, and and this flexibility on the ice and all that. And I agree 1,000% with it. But I also know that there was an opportunity to move him this summer, and Torts was really against it. I know that management could have done this; they could have moved him, and Torts was really fought hard to keep Laughton, and so they ended up keeping him. And I wonder if you're now 13 games in, you're looking at the way Laughton's playing and where he's at, and you're thinking to yourself, man, we missed an opportunity to cash in there. Because I think they could have.
It's pretty clear.
They could have cashed in on it, yeah.
All right, well,
you have to look at what a guy's making and where he's slotted in, right? They had a first-round pick coming back for Laughton, too, by the way.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And let me throw one other thing at you. One of the things that's killing the Flyers is how they are in the face-off circle. They're losing a ton of draws. Couturier is okay. He's just around 50%. So, he's usually better than that. And I'll give him a little bit of a pass because, again, he's coming back after 2 years. You got to just get that timing of it back and, the physicality of it back. But, that, a guy like Laughton should be better in the face-off circle. And he's not, and other guys as well. I'm not just saying it's just him, but, that's part of his game. It's part of what makes him a good player. And it's just, again, I'm just mildly disappointed there. I'm not, but I also don't think he's been a net positive for. Well,
let's talk about that really quick. By the way, I want to correct the record here. I think I said that Laughton was second in the team in points. He's second in assists.
Yeah,
he's fifth overall in points.
Yeah.
Face-off percentage. Now I don't have the raw numbers. I don't have the raw numbers in front of me. I just have percentages.
Yeah.
Garnet Hathaway, 100% face-off win percentage.
I could pull up, but he's not really.
I have the face-offs here, guys.
Okay. Paling 50%.
46.6 for Laughton is what I'm seeing. 49.3 for Couturier.
Yep.
Yeah, that's even low for Couturier.
45.8 for Cates.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not good.
Frost, although not in the lineup consistently, 38.2%.
That's
not near good enough.
No.
You need to be around 50%. That's excellent.
Yeah. So you're the best face-off guys in the league are 60. Okay,
yes.
The best.
That's
right?
Outstanding. Yes.
Yes. And then so if you're in that 55% range, you're really good. And in the past, that's usually where Coots is. So like I said, he's a little low. But even if you're 49.9 or 49.5, whatever he is, at least that's close to 50-50, which is, all right, fine. That's okay. He could be better, but that's okay. Everyone else is far below. And that's not good. And that's the problem that I have. And it's part of the reason why they're chasing the game a little bit. And they're constantly forced to try and get a puck back and forecheck like the devil, right? Because they're not starting with the puck often enough. That's part of the problem.
All right, I have one last disappointment before we switch to this positive.
Yeah.
My number one disappointment through 13 games is John Tortorella.
Ooh, I like it.
Because all of this, or a lot of this, is predicated on the fact that the man who won a Stanley Cup 20 years ago apparently has enough sway within the organization to prevent, or to at least fight hard enough to not trade a Scott Laughton for a potential first-round pick, to have a significant hand in building this roster, and ultimately in deciding the lineups that could in some way, shape, or form impact trade value and the development. It is not under any circumstances a surprise that so many of these young players are struggling, or are guys that we're sitting back and saying we need more out of these guys. Because as we talked about on the morning after the other day, and I will stand resolute in this belief, John Tortorella is not a guy who bleeds the stone. I don't think that he's the guy who's able to develop young players into star players And I'm not sure, to be fair, I'm not sure how many of these young guys have the star potential. So I want to be clear. I don't think that like they're sitting on, a Sidney Crosby on this team that just hasn't been figured out yet. Okay. But I don't see John Tortorella being that guy. And at some point, someone within the coaching staff has to get enough of these young guys back on the right path. We talked on the last Press Row show about how there is a troubling regression setting in with some of these guys, or at best a plateauing. They started really well. The Bobby Brinks of the world started really well, but they've kind of plateaued. I need a veteran coaching staff to get those guys jump-started again and to send them on the right path. And if they can't, then I question what we're doing here. Because, again, despite Ant shaking his head and having the ability to look at a hockey reference page after 4 minutes the other day and citing 4 players who are mid-upper players.
I even forgot Ryan McDonough, who's was a dominant defenseman. Right, I even forgot to mention him too. Derek Stepan, who had a really good season, a couple seasons for the Rangers back then too. There were 6 guys on that team.
That were good players.
They were all kids when he was the coach.
Good players.
And then they got better and went to the Stanley Cup final. Mm-hmm. Eventually, I mean, they developed under Torts.
Didn't develop into star players. Didn't develop into guys that they built the team around for the next 5 or 6
years. Dude, the coach can only take what the player is.
That's why I said I don't think they're sitting on a Crosby right now. But I
what do you want him to turn these guys into? Who do you want him to turn them into?
It's fair to question if all of these guys are plateauing at the same time. Can we figure out a way? Perhaps, I don't fucking know, Anthony. Maybe on the power play that sucks. That absolutely is a fucking embarrassment.
They have zero skill.
Can we perhaps install a system or put the personnel in the correct position to be successful that we can jumpstart some of these young guys? Or are we going to spend the whole season with the power play being dog shit and then sit back and say, well, they weren't skilled enough? Well, fucking figure it out. Torts, figure out the system.
You can't just figure it out. You can't just figure it out.
Change the personnel.
If they had talented players, no. This is where you're wrong. If they had talented players and the power play sucked, then you could put it on the coaching staff and say, guys, you got to figure this out. But if you don't have anybody who can score on a power play, it doesn't matter what they tell them to do. It doesn't matter if they put freaking blindfolds on the opposition and get away with it. They're still not going to score. They can't score.
Put the puck on the net and get a greasy goal. And if you don't, you lose your power play time. Don't get complacent. Execute the game plan. You can't, at the end of a game, you can't just go, well, we keep telling the guys what to do, but they don't do it. Then change the guys. Change the personnel. Put the guys in who are actually going to follow the plan. I don't care. It's not that hard.
Okay.
This isn't that hard. Go ahead,
Do you know that the Montreal Canadiens traded Ryan McDonough for Scott Gomez?
Right. Remember that?
Now that's funny. Gomez, no disrespect. Yeah, was a good player, a good devil, won cups. But man, when they paid him in New York, he was so done. And then Montreal decided they're going to be really brilliant and trade their first round defenseman. Mid-teens, I think he went, but still, McDonough was a really good player. But the one thing that did happen is Tampa Bay, when those players ended up going there, they had those guys end up going, right? Like McDonough, and there's other players that joined them. But Tampa Bay already had a good fray of players that they joined. But you know what? Again, there's part of it. Torts has had a knack, and I'm not saying that this is this group, for making life very difficult on certain young guys. That's been, it's on paper. It's all over the league for years. But I don't know if that's necessarily the case here. He took Pierre-Luc Dubois and it ticked him right off. They traded him to Winnipeg, and then they got Laine back. How's Laine even doing? He's like the guy that just disappeared. 50 goals, looked like the future, and it's like the wheels came off him. He spent some time in Columbus. But what I'm saying is that I don't think that's the case right now, Russ, with this team, because I just don't think they have enough depth. So for Torts or those kind of players, like Anthony's saying. So I agree with a little bit of both of you. and I'm not saying either one of you is wrong. There's certainly a case you could make.
Got Bundy hedging.
Hedging.
I'm not
hedging.
hedging. I'm being honest. I don't hedge. I don't love the way some of the young guys have come about over the years with Torts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is not the team to be talking like we don't have a Ryan McDonough here. You know, we don't have that kind of player that's been developed and then gets shipped off to Tampa where he wins cups, you know, a deadline type of player. So there's right in both of you. But, Russ, you're wrong in terms of how they're looking at this team. And I'm going to be honest with you. Anthony said it 3 weeks ago when this team started. Torts' teams have a knack of having good starts because they're really physically conditioned well. Other teams, like we said, when the 10-game mark goes, it's over, everybody kind of falls into place a little bit and it's game on. And so that's why I'm saying you're both kind of right. I'm not disagreeing with you, Russ. I'm disagreeing with you about where you're at with your thoughts on this particular team. And I understand Anthony, you know, battling you on it. Thanks for that. I enjoyed that very much.
There we go. See, that's good stuff. It's all love. I think there was a thing in the last episode that we did that like somebody was very upset that I talked over Ant. It's like we've been doing this for 5 years, 5.5 years.
I'm used to it.
Ant's like, you know,
I'm used to it.
Ant gets a whole side of me out that I don't like, but here we are, you know. Like look at this. We have people telling us to drop the gloves. That'll end fast. That'd be a quick.
Russ couldn't reach. I'd be like that. It'd be like when you have that little kid trying to hit you and you put your hand out and hold his head and he's swinging and can't reach you.
The ultimate no-win for both of us is for us to like try to run a mile. Either your COVID lungs would kill you or my asthma would. But either way, neither of us win.
Run the mile.
I was going to tell you.
All you do is ask me to walk it.
I got a call from production company and out in the Westchester area, and they actually said they would like Russ to star in the Danilo Cavalcante movie as Cavalcante.
There you go.
And the movie's going to finish with you with the Eagles jersey on.
That's right.
Let's go, Adrian!
Go, Adrian! All right, look. So we had that. I will be honest, though. I do think that I do think, and it's not to be shock jockish. It's not to have a hot take for a hot take. I do think that if we get to a point where we're 20 games in instead of 13, and we're still talking about the same young guys plateauing or regressing, I think that I'm not saying that they're going to make a change. I'm not saying that there's going to be a hot seat, but I do think that it might become more of a thing where you go like, all right, this is a little bit concerning that so many of the young guys aren't producing or aren't getting closer to producing. That to me is a concern. We'll see. I might be wrong.
Yes, but I agree that there is a concern, but the concern is not that the coach can't coach them up. The concern is that the players just might not be what you thought they were going to be. That's the concern, and it has nothing. It has nothing to do with the coach.
I don't have sky high expectations about what these guys are. Like I don't want that to be misconstrued. Like I've said a few times, I don't think that there's a Sidney Crosby that like is on this roster and they just haven't tapped in the potential.
There's not.
I don't
right.
like if I've been unclear about that, I'm not looking at any of the young players on the roster right now and saying like Cam York is going to be a number one defenseman or saying Noah Cates is going to be the heir apparent to Sean Couturier. Like that ain't it. I'm not saying Bobby Brink is going to like become a 40 goal scorer. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I would like to see some of these young guys take that next step. Because that gives you idea that like that this rebuild that you're doing doesn't have to be 5 years. It can be closer to 3 when you get a Gauthier in and when you get a Mishkov in. And then all of a sudden it does feel like there's something that you can build towards. So Jay also wants us to set up the next Ice Wars, Russ versus Ant. So we'll get Bundy on that.
I know we're an hour in here and we want to wrap up pretty soon, but there's 2 quick things that I wanted to get to.
We do positives yet?
We didn't do positives. Let's do our positives.
Oh, shit.
Ant.
We'd have to do positives.
We're going to do our positives and then we'll get to Ant's 2 things.
Really quick, too.
Yeah. So let's do positives. I think that I'll give you my 3. Carter
so you get to take all 3?
No. I'm saying I'll give you 3. Like unless you really want to do the detailed breakdown, we can see how close we are in these.
Go ahead.
All right. I think Carter Hart's had a really nice season for the most part. And I've been as critical of him as any player on this team in the last few years, especially the home road splits. I think Carter Hart's looked really good. And I do think that there's a logical reason why, despite him being quite good, it could make sense to try to sell high on him when you can and really help get some assets for the rebuild. And the other two guys are feel-good stories who also have produced. Sean Couturier, he doesn't look like he's 100%, but he's played really well. You've seen flashes. You've seen him put games together where he's been able to shut down, a Connor McDavid. And the other guy's Cam Atkinson, who is making really smart heads-up plays, good veteran moves, and I think sets a really good example in that locker room for a lot of these younger guys. And I think on a human level, you have to feel really good for those guys after missing out on a season or 2 seasons, that they both come back and that they're playing meaningful hockey. That has to be such a mental relief for them to be able to come back from those injuries and to find success and tangible success that you can actually measure. So those are my 3. Ant?
I'm good with all 3 of them. I'll give you a few more. I'll go Travis Konechny, and not just because he's got 9 goals. I look at Travis Konechny and I see a leadership type guy forming, whereas I didn't necessarily think that would ever come to fruition before. I think he's a guy, you want to talk about a guy who has taken a step under Torts as far as having the right character and the right approach. I think he's a guy that has done that. Obviously, Bobby Brink has been a very nice start, and it's because it's been unexpected, I think. And so that I'll put him into that positive side because I wasn't expecting it. And here it is, and he's been decent. And I'll put 3 guys into one, and I'll say the PhD line, the 4th line for this team has been really good. It's been really good for what a 4th line is supposed to be. Okay, you're not just rolling out this 4th line to say, hey, we need to get these guys 12 minutes. These guys are actually contributing. And it's not just with counting stats or anything like that. It's the way that they can turn the tide of a game with energy and with momentum, and they constantly get put out there at times when it feels like the team needs that lift, and they do a nice job. And I really like the way that they work together and play together. I think those were some under-the-radar moves this offseason to bring in a Hathaway and to bring in a Paling, to really kind of be glue guys on a roster, knowing the team wasn't going to be much of anything, and these guys embracing that role and playing it well. And so I give them a lot of credit. And one thing before I throw it to Bundy, I know a lot of people want to look at Sanheim and say, well, how can you guys go through the first 2 guys here and not mention Travis Sanheim?
Well, let's see if Bundy does. Let's see if Bundy does.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let's go to Bundy, and then we'll come back to Sanheim unless he's not mentioned.
You know what, guys? He's playing more than he should be, but I'm going Sanheim. It's my number 1 guy. I mean, it's not easy. I've been a defenseman back there. He's got guys, top lines coming at him every single night. He's still learning on the fly in a lot of ways. He's playing with a rookie that's done not a whole lot to help him. Yeah, I'm going Sanheim. I know it's not been perfect every game, and he's a guy that has to trend upwards and stay there. When some things go wrong for him, his game slips down. So I think part of the learning curve for him is, I know I've been there, is to let those mistakes go and just to move on from them and continue playing. I'm going to go just 2 more guys that I've really, just off the top of my head, really been good. Atkinson has been another guy that's provided good goal scoring. And you know what? A guy that we looked at that needed to have a good start, and he had, is Farabee. Farabee's had a very good start so far. 6 goals, and he was a guy that really, I thought, needed a lot more to have a good year. Like, he was in the doghouse last year, dealing with that injury. Torts kind of maybe laid it on there, but said there was more. He's had a good start. So those 3 guys, you know what? I'd like to see where we are at, the next 13 games, but I think Sanheim's done a pretty good job for this team, all considered. Yep.
Yeah, and the reason, what I was going to say about him is that I only didn't want to include him because he's being expected to play a role that I ultimately don't think he can play.
Yes, I agree.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what it is. So it's not that I agree with everything you said. He's been better this year. He does have his moments where he doesn't look right, and I just don't. I just wish that he wasn't being put into that position, because I think that he would look even better if he was where he's supposed to be slotted.
Yeah, but kudos to him, because he is playing those minutes, and he doesn't have a Risto. Now, is Risto capable of covering those lines too? No, but it would certainly be an upgrade, over having a rookie that's just waiting for the play to come to him.
Right.
Good job by him. Yeah, he's had a good start. I like to see his development continue.
Yeah.
Was that 2 or 3?
No, he did
That was
3. He mentioned Atkinson as well.
Okay.
And Farabee.
There's one guy here I think who maybe is an honorable mention. If we can do that before we get to Ant's 2 things.
Yeah.
Sean Walker. Sean Walker's played the third most minutes on the team. Stop laughing at the comment on the screen and pay attention.
I think I didn't
put it up.
I think Eddie Munster would kick the living fuck right out of you. I do.
Out of me?
Yeah.
You're probably right. You're probably right. But no, like I think Sean Walker, he's played the third most minutes on the team. He's a guy that I think everybody had little to no expectations for this season. He's been thrust into a role again because there were injuries to Stahl and to Ristolainen. And for the most part, I think he's been steady. We almost never talk about him. And as Bundy has pointed out a million times, for a defenseman, especially not like the top defenseman, for him to never come up means that he's not doing anything incredibly well, but he's not doing anything incredibly horrible. So I'd say that he's had like a nice start to the year.
He's this year's Nick Seeler in a lot of ways, right? Like guy you didn't expect anything from, who's actually giving you a little bit of something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I agree with that. So the 2 things I wanted to get to real quick. So we mentioned it, Bundy, and it's actually was the title of the episode. If you were with us from the beginning, the team's out on this West Coast trip. And it's actually been, Torts has actually given them a very light schedule away from the games, giving them some free time to just spend time together. I know a lot of guys went golfing out in L.A. This was yesterday or the day before, I forget which. It was Wednesday or Thursday. And then now they're after these 2 games tonight and tomorrow, they're immediately flying to Vegas, and so they're going to be in Vegas Saturday night in Vegas, Sunday Vegas, Monday Vegas, and then Tuesday game. And I think there's only 1 practice in there, so they're going to have a lot of time to just kind of hang out and be in Vegas. And Torts was asked this question. Actually, Kevin Kurz asked him about it, and he laughed about it and said, "Look, it's good, get out there and have some time to spend, getting to hang out with each other in places that you don't normally get to hang out. They deserve an opportunity. And you know what? If they come into a practice or come into a game and they've had a late night the night before and they're playing guilty, that's a good thing, right?" He said that a few times. That's not the first time he said it, but as somebody who's been part of teams before and you've had those kinds of road trips and guys get to hang out together, how much value do you really put into that as far as developing the kind of culture that you need for a successful team?
It's really funny. I'm going to quote the new president because he used to say that Jonesy, he used to say those team building exercises, if you have good goaltending, you don't need it. He goes, team building is called good goaltending. That'll stop a lot. Was he ever right? John LeClaire said that. I remember one year Ken Hitchcock came in there and he waddled into the room like he always did, and we're sitting in this lodge up in Canmore. Remember we had to go up there for it was 2005 up north of Calgary because we opened out in the Western Canada.
Yeah.
And I remember Hitch came in. He's like, how did you guys enjoy the team building today? And I remember Johnny just fucking looked at him and went, "What a fucking waste of time." He goes, you're better off sending 20 guys out in a night of beer drinking and joining them up that way. But it's so funny how every team does this, and will continue to do it. But I think it's so funny that those are some of your veteran guys. That's what they thought of it. And I've kind of fell into the same line as those guys. Like, it's nice, but falling off a picnic table into someone's arms and your group is kind of fucking goofy. Let's just go out and play hockey, boys, and let's love each other because we're a team, and let's play hard for one another. That's how you build stuff,
Yeah.
And, but again, it's nice. I'm sure they're going to have golf out there and nice dinners and stuff. And
So,
So
so there's value to those things, right? To be able
there
to
is, but the action, yes,
the social aspect of it.
Yes, the social part, but the other, like the team stuff where you're doing like that, they bring in and
The
spend
trust.
tons of
So
money.
you don't believe in the trust fall, is what you're saying?
No, I don't. I think
So
it's
if we stood Anthony up on a picnic table and told him to fall back, would we catch him or would we just let him crash?
Well,
to
I'm
the
not going to
ground?
let you fall, Russ. Like I'm going to be there to catch you, but at the same time you're falling, I'd be saying to myself, "What the fuck am I doing here?"
I'd trust Bundy. I wouldn't trust you, Russ. That's for sure.
So anyway, yeah, we're gonna have a little fun with it, but that's so funny that you say that. And you know what, Anthony? I believe in camaraderie and team stuff more as much as anybody, and I think it's great. So hopefully they can figure it out there, and hopefully they find a way to get some points before they take to that Vegas trip.
Yeah,
it'll certainly make for the trip a lot better. We were supposed to go to New Orleans. Remember with Roger Nielsen, he canceled the trip because we'd lost we hadn't won in 12 straight. So different times, I guess, but it probably would have been better if they sent us. Maybe we would have come around a little quicker.
One quick thing here before I get to my last thing. So Michael said, thanks for not beating the Morgan Frost issue to death today. I do have something on that, but I will save it.
What?
We'll save it. Yeah, we'll save it.
Why are you going to save it?
And because it's not necessarily fits into the mold of what we're discussing today. I think we'll save it for, let's see what happens in the game tonight and tomorrow, and it could be part of the morning afters over the next day or two. See how things go.
Is he going to play tonight?
Well, that's the question. That's part of it. That's why I said. That's why I want to save it. The last thing that I wanted to bring up, and I think that a lot of people have asked about over the course of the morning here, now afternoon, is Mike Richards is coming back to take part in the alumni game that was announced, and is kind of I think it was a little bit of a surprise to everybody that this was a thing, that an olive branch that was reached out, and he accepted it to come back. I just want to get your guys' take on it because I actually think it's kind of a good thing. I think it's good. I think it'll be good for Mike to get back and and realize that he was appreciated by a lot of people here, despite all of the stuff that he kind of went through, whether it was dealing with the media who he hated or whether it was dealing with, the way that the team moved on from him. I think he'll find it a little bit cathartic for himself, and I think it'll be good for the fans to say that, hey, look, we are now getting a connection back to that group of guys. It's not, that's the next group of guys that we need to have that, alumni connection to, that we don't really have anybody from that group. Other than really like Danny, because he's the GM, right? But we don't really have a connection to that group, so I think it's good to get him back as well. I think this will be a win-win.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Eric came back, so I mean anybody can come back after that. So
yeah,
I played with Mike for a year. He was a great teammate, like good guy, young guy. When I played with him,
wow, that's right, you did play with him for a year.
I played with Mike for a year. Yeah, we were teammates, and he was a good kid. He's from Ontario. I love talking to him. But very, very, again, whatever went on, and I don't want to get into it now. He went on and won 2 Stanley Cups elsewhere. And I think that's great. Like, I think anybody that you go through a hockey journey, there was a sour taste, I think, when he left town. But the guy can't deny his winning ways. He's won American League. He's won at the CHL. He's won World Juniors. He's won at the NHL level.
And the Olympics.
Just feel like one of those guys. You just have him around and you win. And again, there's a lot of stuff that I think went on a personal level that ended up for him moving out of here. But I loved him. I think it's going to be great that he's coming back. He's a good guy. And you know what? We all go through issues in life that people may sour on you, and it's happened to me many times. And you can only hope that you have enough good people running things and doing the right things that you can mend those fences. And I think certainly this is a guy that certainly deserves to have those fences mended here. He was a good Flyer for a few years, captain, and he brought a lot of joy, a lot of good playoff series to this team. So I'm looking forward to getting on the ice with Mike if I decide I'm going to play. I already asked if I could. We'll see what happens, but it'll be a great thing, I think, for him to come back. He was a well-celebrated player in his tenure here, and would have liked to have seen it be a 15-year career here, but maybe Carter, I see Carter's name, maybe he retires by then. He can join us too. He's not close. I mean, he's getting close, rather. I mean, he's getting up there in age now, so – but Mike was really, really, really good. So,
This is a good question by Lee Carasso. Who threw out the olive branch to Mike, Briere or Jonesy?
I would
or could it have been both?
I would say it's probably a little bit of both. I would bet that it's Jonesy primarily, but I wouldn't be surprised if Danny got on a call there as well and just kind of talked about what they're trying to do here. I mean, Danny was a teammate of his, right? So I think that always goes another step further. Sure, Jonesy's had a relationship with him as well as a broadcaster, but I think that probably, a guy who was in the room and battled with him on the ice probably has it goes a lot further, I think, for a player like Richards. I'm going to tell a quick Mike Richards story, and then we can wrap this thing up. So just so everybody knows, we are making every effort to get Mike on Snow the Goalie. I think it's going to happen. We have a lot of buy-in for it. It's just a matter of when he's coming into town, and when, and tying that together with our episode. But I'm pretty certain that he's going to come on. I feel confident in saying it. If something falls through, I'll tell you why, but I mean, I think it's going to happen. Mike Richards was here. He had a very poor relationship with the media in general. I was not one of the people who he had a poor relationship with. We actually spoke a lot. And when he was traded to L.A. that summer, I was actually on vacation up on a lake in Ontario. In a town called Haliburton, Ontario, Lake Kashagwigamog, I believe.
I know Haliburton well.
Right, I think that's the name of the lake that's up there. And so I was up there for the summer, and I was like, you know what? I should see. I know Mike's got a cabin somewhere up here in Ontario, and Bundy. This goes to show you how clueless I was about the size of Ontario.
Kenora. He's from 12 hours.
Well, that's the thing. So I call him up, and I'm like, "Hey, man," I'm like, it's totally unexpected, but I'm up at a cabin in Ontario, and I thought, hey, any chance we can get together, maybe catch up and like talk about what happened, and you leaving and now heading to L.A. And he's like, "Yeah, man, why don't you come out? I'll give you my address, and we'll go out fishing, and we'll have a few beers, and we'll tell a story and whatever." Like, all right, great. He gives me the address, and I look it up, and it was like, I think, a 14-hour drive from where I was to where he was. I was like, I had no idea Ontario was that massive.
Massive. Like, you go to Thunder Bay, like you get up to Lake Superior, and you're talking. No, Richie, like you're talking about how long it would take him, like a 5-hour flight from Philly.
It was
crazy. Yeah,
I couldn't believe how far it was. So unfortunately, I did not go to Mike Richards' cottage that summer.
That's where you drive 14 hours in Manhattan, Anthony. That would have been an even better story. Imagine all that you would have gotten out of him.
My family would have
sent you the address and he wasn't actually there.
My family would have killed me if I would have said, "Guys, I'm going to go drive 14 hours to go see Mike Richards while we're on vacation." That would have been bad.
Though. Could have been a fun time.
I didn't know we wanted him on. I probably would have texted him. If we want to get him on, I should try. He might tell me to beat it, but who knows? We can't do it until you try. Do we want to get anybody on? You guys should let us know who you'd like us to interview. Throw some ideas at us on Twitter and let us know, because it's very easy for us to get guys, whether it's a current player or an alumni that you may find interesting. We'd love to have guys like that on for 15, 20 minutes.
If you believe Teddy, you guys work for the team. It's 100% will be on the show. And can you please explain to Teddy?
We do not work
and
for
to
the
a couple
team.
of the people on Twitter who don't seem to understand yet.
We do not work for the team. We just sat here and freaking ripped them for an hour and 20 minutes. And you're going to sit there and tell us that we work for the team? Come on, man.
If they want to start, listen, if everybody has a price. If they want to pay me a substantial amount of money to be a content creator on all that, like, we can have a conversation. But that ain't happening. They aren't signing my checks.
No. All we have is a partnership. We are a licensee of the team. That does not mean we are we are not paid by the team. We are not a team employee. So
they give us very nice equipment to use at the Press Row show, a good spot that we can set up where we sometimes are very critical of them, and sometimes we try to praise the guys when they do the stuff very well on the ice. But there we go. We're getting people. Here,
by the way,
Adam
Glickish just put Sean Podine in. Bundy, did you know Podes?
I know him. I played with him.
That's right, you did play with Podes. What a great dude he is.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say him bad. I mean, I just I went out with him a lot. I'm trying to put those memories behind me.
D.D. Skinner says chemo Timonen. Unofficial fourth host Nancy says chemo, be still my heart.
But Russ, she likes a lot of people, Russ. She likes
does.
a lot. The sweet baby.
She likes LeClaire.
Sweet baby muffin, Bobby Brink. Is that what she called him?
Something like that. Dumpling. Sweet baby
dumpling.
Yeah,
muffin,
but she likes from the childhood. We both like John LeClaire. She really liked John LeClaire. That's her favorite player when we were growing up.
Yeah.
And then chemo when we were in college. Chemo Timonen was just like the nice steady vet. Lee Carrasso though, Iron Mike ain't happening. We tried this. We tried this during COVID. We tried this for over a year. Iron Mike Keenan couldn't figure out how to get on his computer and turn on the camera. It was something.
Three times, and then the third time on the third one he absolutely ghosted us. Like the first two, he was just sending me messages like, "I can't get on this damn thing. I don't understand how this internet thing works with Zoom," because that's what we were using Zoom at the time. And then the third time he set the comment, we were sitting here waiting for it, and he didn't show up, and we were like, I'm texting him, and he just never responded.
Yeah.
He just never responded.
This is a good one. Wayne Simmons. That would be interesting.
It would be.
He's still inactive. He's still technically.
I guess he's technically
player.
active. I don't know. Yeah.
Now, JR would be good. Roman Czechmanik's not happening. I don't even know if he can speak. He couldn't speak when he was here. Someone put Somick down too.
Somick. Yeah.
Sean C says Mike Knuble. We've had Knuble on the show. I'd encourage people to go back into the archives. By the way, I'm still adding.
We also had
episodes to the podcast feed.
We also had Roenick on the show.
I think I still have a lot of the videos that we didn't release at the time because we didn't have a YouTube channel at the time, but I think I still have a lot of the interviews that we did during COVID that we can throw onto the YouTube channel. But Knuble is one that we did on video as well. Let's see. Rico. This has been a question a few times about having Rico on.
You know what? I texted Rico like a few months ago just to check in. He's weird. Nobody can get a hold of him. He's around. He's alive, but he went back to Quebec, and I know this. But what happened is that when he came here, he spoke a lot more English. But he went back, and what happens is when you put the English down, you lose a lot of your English. Again.
Yeah, très difficile.
So that would be. It's kind of interesting to think. I don't have a probably closer guy like on the ice than Rico. So if we ever get him, I'd love to have him on. But it just depends where he's at with that.
Chris Naffy wants to know if we'd ever get Lindros on the Only Flyers podcast.
He would not do it.
No.
Nope.
Well, unless you paid him.
Hey, the Flyers can pay him to make an appearance. Who knows? Who's to say?
I have a feeling that relationship is probably that ship has sailed a little bit.
Oh.
Not to say that he's permanently gone or anything like that, but to think that Eric Lindros is now an ambassador for the team again, no, not happening.
No.
Don't think that's a thing anymore.
This is a good one. So Teddy actually asks, like, Bundy, who do you think would be a good guest? Because everybody's throwing out names, but not everybody's an interesting interview. Go back to your playing days.
Yeah.
Who's somebody who would have great stories?
Well, and that's part of it. Like I have Johnny LeClaire on, but he's not a great storyteller. He loves listening to stories, and he's a funny guy. Like he's one of my best friends in hockey. We room together. But in terms of coming on and be able to spit out a story and drag the audience in, that's not his forte. That's something to think about. Like who's a character? There's a lot of characters I played with, so it's a matter of kind of getting into it. Let me think on that one a little bit because there's a lot of really good dudes I did play with and or know from the organization. We always want to try to have some Flyer flair to it, but if we obviously ever got a guy like Wayne Gretzky, we're not going to say no to it. Or I'd love to have Yager on whenever he retires and talk about that rivalry, but that I had with him, his years as a Penguin against the Flyers. So there's a lot of interesting ones, and we'll try to figure that one out.
It's going to be really weird when you check him and he gets knocked off the stream. It's going to be very... No, okay.
And Hitchcock.
Yeah, let's get Hitchy on.
He can come on and tell us how great he is, how he's changed so many lives and delivered Stanley Cup to a city that hadn't had one before. God, I was so good. And that's why I'm going in the Hall of Fame, because I'm amazing. We used to sit there on the bench sometimes when he was coaching, and it'd be like a bad play on the power play, and he'd like fucking launch himself like into the glass behind him. And I remember we'd sit there and I'd be like, holy fuck, he's going to break the glass and fly into the seats behind him. And I remember like 8 guys would look around like, fuck it, settle down. You're going to bust the glass. So, fuck. Anyway, yeah. Great. That was probably his Hall of Fame speech.
Brandon sounds a bit like Dr. Evil. God help us. That's just
Too good.
Oh, here we go. Hey, Bundy, you and I could work this out together.
Yes.
We have Hitch.
Fuck. That was his line. He'd be on this thing. He'd be like, fuck.
Here you go. Go ahead, guys.
Where?
Oh, he wants Hitch to talk to Trump. Go ahead.
Fuck, why are you playing so light right now? Fuck!
I play very heavy. Very heavy. I'm not very heavy. I don't weigh a lot. I'm in great shape. I play just heavy enough. And I also play light. I'm light on my feet like a ballerina. I float like a butterfly. I sting like a bee.
Fuck, you can't be talking about me then, huh?
What's your favorite breakfast food? Do you have a favorite? Do you like bacon?
Bring Anthony back.
No, you're not going there, Russ.
I eat because I'm sad. I'm sad because I eat.
Oh, we are not doing that. We are not going there. We are not doing it. All right, Russell. I saw what you were trying to do.
Listen,
you're such an evil little man you are.
No, I'm totally fine. I was just wondering. All right. Show went off the rails. We got to do an hour and a half. We got to do the show that we always like to do, where we didn't have to break down the game. But we will be doing that Saturday and Sunday. We'll be doing the morning after. I think I screwed up my voice now. Bundy had me laughing so hard before that I had a coughing fit, which did not feel great. But my heart feels full after we've gone through this together. Flyers remain out on the West Coast.
You want one more Hitch story?
Yeah, go ahead.
Comes off, me and Desjardins come off the ice once. We had a play. Actually got the puck out of the zone. And he's like, hey, you two, this isn't the fucking ice capades. And I think it was JR turned around and goes, thank fucking God you're not in the ice capades. I pictured before I went the next shift, I pictured Hitch with one of those tutus on and those little fucking stretch pants doing a flip in the air, like a little spin.
I want to see Hitch on skates so bad now. I might Photoshop it. I swear, I might.
He couldn't even tie his skates. That was a process. We used to have guys sneaking around the corner looking, going, fuck, look, he can't even get his skates tied.
Soon to be Hockey Hall of Famer. Lacing up those skates. All right.
That's enough.
Flyers played the Ducks on Friday night. They played the Kings with a 10:30 start on Saturday night. We'll have the morning after. Times to be determined. Somewhat mongrel hours on Saturday and Sunday.
Mongrel hours.
Then they're back on they're continuing to be on the road on Wednesday against the Hurricanes. We'll have a morning after show that Thursday. They're back at Wells Fargo Center for the first time in quite a while. Next Saturday, the 18th, they'll be hosting the Vegas Golden Knights, and they're also home against the Blue Jackets. So a lot of hockey coming up in the next 10 days or so. Actually, no, that's not true. It's really the next 10 days. A lot of hockey. And we will be here to break it all down here on Snow the Goalie. You can find us on YouTube.
By the way, I just wanted to
go ahead.
Just because Chris Naffy put this up. So Bobby Taylor, who has been a broadcaster down with the Tampa Bay Lightning for years, he has a podcast, and one of our listeners, Ray, had sent over a little snippet of a podcast, and he was talking about, Bobby Taylor was talking about his time in Philly, and a story that I had never heard before, and I just wanted to mention it real quick. It's really kind of funny. So when he was here, there was a woman who I guess worked for the Flyers, and they were really close. And then it was like, hey, I guess her uncle died, and so they asked a few of the guys, hey, can you go to the woman's uncle's funeral, show up, make it a good sign for the Flyers attended, make her feel good about it. So Bobby Taylor goes. The only other guy that would go with him was Tom Bladen, was a defenseman back then with them, and they show up, and as they're walking into the funeral home in South Philly, they're getting frisked, and they didn't understand why, and all these people are like looking at them and staring at them weird. These two younger guys walking in, right, and they're like, and finally they walk over and they say, "Who's your uncle?" It was mob boss Angelo Bruno. They had no idea that they were going to the viewing for Angelo Bruno, who was murdered by John Gotti.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they just walked into it like thinking they were doing something. They thought they were doing something nice, and it was like,
great guy. He was a great guy. Huh? Love that guy. I win the cup there. He's sitting in the stands going, "Hey, Bernie, fucking great job winning the cup, huh?" And I find out he died, and I said, I got to get down there. It was the chicken man that killed Bruno. I said, let's go to the funeral. I hear they'll have a few beer after. I do, before we go, happy birthday to my son tomorrow. He'll be 17.
Hey, happy birthday, Chris.
National championship tonight for football. So happy birthday to my only son and number 4 of the kids. So it's going to be, we'll have a good weekend, and we got Flyer hockey back-to-back, right, guys? I know we went totally off the rails today, but if you're not laughing, you're crying, so you may as well start laughing.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
There's also a note here. I have not seen the highlight yet, but let's see. Who was it that just said it? Eric Berkey says that Mishkov just scored over in the KHL. He's having a nice season.
Cut up the video, Russ. Hurry up. Put it out. Promote it.
We need somebody to just be our social media intern to do the clipping of the video.
Anybody want to do that?
Where's intern Andrew where we need him?
You know what? Intern Andrew he needs to work harder on this stuff,
Yeah.
No, we love intern Andrew. Great guy. All right. We will be back tomorrow morning to break down the Ducks game. We'll be back on Sunday morning to break down the Kings game. We thank everybody who joined us live on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. We thank everybody who watches after the fact on those platforms. And, of course, we love the people who listen in the podcast feed, which reminds us that if you do listen on Apple Podcasts, that you leave a 5-star rating and a 5-star review. It's been a while since we've had one. We haven't been asking for them. But if you love the show, even if you like the show, even if you hate the show, leave a 5-star review. We'll read what's in your review. Even if it's critical, we love it. We will read it. If you're on Spotify, you can leave a 5-star rating in the app. So please do. And let at least 2 people in your life know about Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast. Let them know that we're here. We do the show live. We do the press row show up in the sports book, the 3rd floor, all the way up. You go to section 121. You take that little elevator all the way up to the sports book. You tell them you're coming over to Snow the Goalie in the sports book. Come find us. We do the press row show. We do the morning after. We do this show. And a big thank you to everybody, as always. So for Ant, who you can find on Twitter at AntSanPhilly, for Bundy on Twitter at CTerrian6, I'm Russ at Joy on Broad. Thanks for listening to, and maybe even watching, Snow the Goalie. We will talk to you all again, I guess, tomorrow morning.